Catherine will be leading on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Fife. I'm the finance critic for Ontario's official opposition. And I'm joined here, of course, with our leader and with our education critic. Since the government first tabled the budget in April, two deeply troubling things have happened in Ontario. First, inflation hit a whopping 8%. For working people and families, that means that their paychecks have lost nearly a tenth of their buying power. People are leaving a balance on the credit card each month. They're forced to choose between signing the kids up for summer camp this year or getting the car repaired. Everyone is cutting back on the grocery list. And the recipients of OW and ODSP have gone from abject legislative poverty to constant hunger and desperation. Although inflation alone has exploded to over 8%, we also know that some big box stores and giant corporations are using inflation as an excuse to gouge and to profiteer, to take more of our hard-earned money. The second thing that's happened since this government tabled a budget in April is that our healthcare system has been plunged into crisis. And despite what the Minister of Health said yesterday, the human resources crisis in our healthcare system is real. There are 5,400 fewer healthcare and social service workers in Ontario compared to just 1 year ago. Emergency rooms have been forced to close, and ICUs have issued bed alerts. There is nothing scarier than rushing a loved one to the emergency room only to find the doors locked and the lights out. Or the only place to wait once you get to the hospital is on the floor in a hallway. This is Ontario's healthcare system. And our healthcare system has not seen this kind of crisis in generations. At the root of it, our healthcare heroes are exhausted. They are run off their feet at every shift. And they do not feel appreciated. And as long as Doug Ford continues to dig his heels in on Bill 124 and underpay healthcare workers that sense of disrespect and they are leaving, these healthcare workers, they are leaving, they are retiring early, and they are taking jobs elsewhere. The budget also shortchanged education, and now that inflation takes another 8% bite, it is a deep, real dollars cut. And what does that mean for our kids? Teacher layoffs have started, and they will accelerate. Class sizes were big in June, and they will be even bigger in September, with inflation accelerating. This budget, the 2022-23 budget, now includes deep cuts in real dollars. And we have still not debated that budget because it doesn't keep up with inflation. The budget 2022-2023 does not keep up with inflation. And this is one of the pressing issues that Ontarians are facing. And for anyone unsure if this budget stands up to fiscal scrutiny, look no further than the Ford government tabling it quickly and quietly and allowing for little or no debate. They don't want to talk about it because they know it's a sham. Conservative choices are costing us too much, and their failure to course correct, given what Ontarians are going through, is a shocking failure of leadership. I'll pass it over to our interim leader, Peter Tabuns.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Since April, when this government tabled its budget, inflation has gone up and healthcare has gone down the tubes. The government had a chance to table a new budget to deal with these crises, and Doug Ford chose not to. Since April, we've only seen hope dwindle. Healthcare staff losses are accelerating. Compared to just last month, there are 3,400 fewer workers in healthcare and social services, and inflation is exploding. This budget did nothing to offer relief from the punishing cost of inflation or to rebuild and improve our healthcare system. It didn't reverse Ford's cuts to education or to the battle against climate change. And by ignoring what's happened in the long months since then and retabling the same budget, the Doug Ford government is going to send our healthcare crisis into an even faster spiral. He's going to force families to cut even more from their household budgets to deal with inflation. The official opposition is proposing changes to give people the hope and relief they deserve. We want this budget to fund action to end the hospital's crisis, including scrapping Bill 124, lifting up wages, fixing working conditions and giving healthcare heroes unlimited mental health supports, funding an urgent mission to accredit tens of thousands of internationally educated professionals, and launching a hiring and training blitz. We want to lift wages up for healthcare workers, teachers, education workers, and other working folks, to end Doug Ford's low-wage policy and set a precedent of raises that keep up with inflation. We want to see a minimum wage raised to $20 within this term. We want to see ODSP and OW doubled so people can afford food and afford to live with dignity. We want to introduce real accountability and penalty for companies that price gouge. We want to reverse cuts to our kids' schools so they head back to smaller classes with more help from caring adults as they recover. We're calling on the Conservatives to introduce permanent paid sick days now, and as well other COVID protection measures, including better ventilation and a stronger program to encourage people to update their vaccinations with second, third, and fourth shots. We want Doug Ford to reverse 4 years of cuts to climate action. People are simply paying too high a price right now. Conservative choices are costing people too much. It's time to offer relief and hope. And with that, we're open to questions.
Peter, isn't it fair to say that people are talking about this healthcare crisis, the hospitals closing, but in reality, there's not much any government can actually do in the next few weeks to stop ERs from closing, and these are things that are beyond fixing in the short term right now?
I think there are two things here to consider. One is that by failing to send out a signal that healthcare workers are valued, and that would be scrapping Bill 24, you're continuing to discourage healthcare workers from staying on the job. You're demoralizing them. And although scrapping Bill 124 won't end the ER crisis tomorrow, it will slow down that loss of healthcare workers that I noted earlier in my comments. It is going to be a longer-term rebuild, but don't make the situation worse. Don't further discourage people. Don't further demoralize them and drive them out of healthcare. And scrapping Bill 124 right now would be part of that. Frankly, saying that we're committed to substantial raises helps retain people. Putting in place mental health supports so that people can recover from burnout would help. But you're right. There's going to be some immediate things we can do. I've listed them. But there's a longer-term situation of rebuilding. I don't see the commitment to rebuilding in what's been brought forward by this government.
You would have liked to see the government actually retable an entire new budget with new projections, new assumptions about inflation and everything else?
Well, given that inflation has soared since they tabled previously, given the depth of the crisis we're facing, they should have substantially amended that budget. They need a course correction, as my colleague has said. That has to happen if you're actually going to deal with these problems. If you're just going to say you're going to deal with the problems, well, then you can do whatever you want.
But I don't see other provinces ripping up budgets that they'd done a few months ago and redoing them. Surely budgets are an annual thing. If there wasn't an election, the government would have passed that budget and would have had to adjust to inflation and other factors as we go. Isn't it extraordinary to completely come up with a new budget just because we've had a few months
Well,
ago?
let's face it. They could substantially amend the budget. It was within their power. It is within their power to substantially amend the budget. And frankly, when the situation changes, then the budget should change. And beyond that, the budget as it was initially presented was deficient. They have the power to amend it. We've suggested changes. We've suggested amendments. They should be taking those suggestions and putting them into practice.
You've called for ODSP to double, but I believe during the campaign the NDP also called for changes to social assistance, like a reimagining of sorts. Do you think social assistance not only needs to be raised, but changed in delivery?
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Catherine.
Thank you very much for the question. You're quite right. OW and ODSP entered into a privatization model. We called for an overhaul and greater oversight on it, but also to make sure that it was public, And the fact that, my colleague Lisa Gretzky and myself had met with the ministry prior to in 2019, and they were piloting this, corporate model of ODSP and OW, which has failed in other jurisdictions, including the UK and Australia. We wanted to ensure that that program actually had some integrity, and that there were obviously the rates needed to increase. So the fact that this government seems to be heading and is determined to go down this privatization road actually creates a lot of instability in the community. And to see the Minister of Finance be asked the question, can you live on $1,200 a month, and completely not answer that question. It's impossible. We all have people in our ridings. We hear the same stories. People are hurting, and they deserve leadership on this file.
Just on ODSP, you guys are saying double now, but I believe in the campaign it was a 20% increase, so just kind of like what's changed.
So we started with the 20%, you're quite right, but we listen to community, and that's the fact that this government does not listen to community. And the fact that they are actually also promising the 5%, but then also tying it to inflation. Basically, they are guaranteeing legislative poverty for Ontarians, and they're embedding it and tying it to those inflationary pressures. So this is a government who is so disconnected from the real experience of Ontarians. We acknowledged during the campaign that after further examination that it should be reviewed. We did. We course corrected. It's time that this government does the same.
I'll give that over to Marit Stiles. Marit.
Hi, I'm Marit Stiles. I'm the MPP for Davenport. I'm the education critic for the official opposition. It was very disappointing today to hear this minister come forward with what seems to be a plan to make a plan to take money out of public education. And that's what I think this payment will be. Now, we're going to wait and see what the details are. But I know, speaking to parents across this province, that what they would like to see and what would help our students the most is smaller class sizes, are more educational assistance in our classrooms, more supports for students. And that's, I think, what parents have been looking for. But ultimately, what this government seems to be planning to do is to take dollars, very precious dollars, after cutting our education system and putting that, taking that out of public education again.
Marit, do you believe that this is a form of like an effort at privatizations, and this money is supposed to go to like tutoring services?
You know, this is the concern I have, is that this seems to be diverting dollars that we need in our public education system out of public education, where it can help the most children the most, and into funding private services. We'd like to see, again, and we've been consistent in calling for this for years now, we need this government to lower class sizes. That will have the biggest impact. Put those services in our classrooms where it can help the most children today.
Any other questions? No. Thank you very much.